Season 2023-24 has now started. We've seen media day. Training camp starts this week. So we're getting going. So we have a lot to unpack, before the season starts, before we start getting into player performances, things like that. First off on the list, we have to talk about the Jrue Holiday trade from the Portland Trail Blazers to the Celtics. Completes essentially the whole Damian Lillard trade. How does that impact the Celtics, and could we possibly see Bucks Celtics Eastern Conference Finals matchup? We're gonna give our media day reactions, just the things that we heard, including Kawhi Leonard. He said some things about the new load management policy. We all know about that rule. We'll get more into that. James Harden was a no-show, which to most people isn't too much of a surprise. So we're gonna look more into what could possibly happen with James Harden, Daryl Morey, and the Philadelphia 76ers. Then we're going to kind of look at Paris Olympics 2024. We know it's a bit ways away, but obviously at Media Day this week, a lot of the media thought that it was appropriate to ask players about that. So we're going to kind of do a fun little game with that, make our own roster, talk about the players that we could possibly see next summer in Paris for the Olympics. What's up, everybody? This is Ballin' Out, Sean Robinson, Grant Rhodes. Grant, like I said, getting into the NBA season, man. How excited are you?
Dude, I mean, you already know, man. Basketball is probably our thing there. I mean, we probably talk the most about it for sure, besides Michigan State rivalry. NBA is like the big, we like just it's always going on. Everyone's always involved with. I think all of us grew up playing basketball for the most part, so it's like we all got that, the love for the game, and we all like it so much, and so I'm excited. We both got pretty good teams this year. I'm thinking I'm hopeful on my team. I know you're very hopeful on your team,
Man.
like every year, but I feel bad for you already. Um, yeah, but it's going to be fantastic. We already got some big trades, like we were kind of talking about. Obviously, last episode talking about that Dame trade. Uh, Looking forward to seeing that, and then kind of that latter half of the trade there, like you were talking about with Jrue Holiday going over to the Celtics, which is I thought that was very very interesting. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think we all knew obviously he was getting moved from the Blazers. That wasn't going to be his permanent home, but yeah, the Celtics. I was just like, oh my goodness. Okay, so we get. I think we really get to see some competition there in the East, and I know. I'll just come out and say this right now. I know you kind of alluded to the fact that is this going to potentially be a Eastern Conference Finals matchup? I would put $100 that yes. If injuries aside, of course, unless major injuries happen, there is nobody from the East that is going to come out and compete with either one of those two teams. Well, we'll get into the Sixers a little bit more. Won't kind of get into that as much, but Sixers, I don't think they're going to be able to compete essentially with either one of those teams. The Hawks aren't going to. I mean, you name it, you're not going to get the Miami Heat. They're not going to be able to. This new look Jimmy, I just I don't see them getting it done. So early, kind of very very early, I should say. Prediction is going to be Bucks and Celtics, no question. Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's ironic that it was so funny that that trade happened. I remember one of my brothers. He's a big Celtics fan, and so obviously I was right there with him. I had to tell him, let him know the news, and he was just like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah." And the first thing I thought about was how in the last episode when we talked about Dame, I sat there and cooked the Celtics and said, "Who's gonna guard Damian Lillard? I said something about Derek White. The presence that they didn't have Marcus Smart anymore. And what do you know? About
Uh,
2 days later, he gets traded to the Boston Celtics. So it kind of solved that problem. Uh, let's just get more into this trade. Basically, um, we all knew that Drew Holiday, once he got traded from the Bucks to the Portland Trailblazers, that Drew Holiday was going to get moved. He was going to go somewhere else. So two team trade, just the Celtics and the Portland Trailblazers. The Celtics are traded Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, a 2024 Golden State first, a 2029 unprotected Boston first, the Blazers. And the Blazers obviously gave away Jrue Holiday to the Boston Celtics. So, like you said, just initial reaction was just like, wow, I feel like this definitely helps the team. Like like no question. The big question, like I mentioned, was Marcus Smart. How are they going to? He was that defensive guy. He was that defense presence, that they had and they needed. And the question was, how is he going to be able to? How are the Celtics going to be able to move on? Without that defensive-minded guard. But they got Jrue Holiday, who is an NBA champion. He's an All-Star. He's proven he can win games, not only on the defensive side but on the offensive side a couple times too. So I feel like he definitely elevates this Boston Celtics team. We already saw they got Kristaps Porzingis earlier this past summer. Obviously, that was a big deal. Yes, you do lose Robert Williams, so you lose a little bit of defense in the interior. But I mean, you have Kristaps, and you still got old man Al Horford over there. So maybe maybe he'll be able to block some shots, turn the clock back 10 years. I don't know, but just how could this basically improve the Celtics not only for standings wise during the regular season, but obviously the playoffs.
Yeah, so I mean, kind of like you were saying, it's funny, like you said, they needed someone to guard Dame, and they took that personally. They said, "All right, bet, let's go get someone," and so they did, and they got arguably probably one of the better defenders in the league. I mean, I know after if anyone's watching like those podcasts where they have any of those NBA players on, they talk about who's some of the guys that have given you the toughest matchup or who's guarded you the toughest, and you always hear his name tossed around a lot. So like that shows a lot to kind of how he carries himself on the defensive end, which is going to be essential. I mean, because we were talking about it. How do you stop this Bucks team, right? Dame with the pick and roll with Giannis, that's going to be tough to stop right there. Because if you're stopping Giannis right there, everything in the paint, that leaves Dame wide, essentially cooking from the 3-point line. And so with the addition of Jrue Holiday there, you're going to get that just defensive edge that I think it's definitely going to push them to that next limit. But also, you got to think too is Jrue Holiday's comments were like, "I want to be a Buck for life. I want to be here forever." And then they kind of kicked him to the curb. They said, "All right, we want Dame," and that's essentially what happened. And so you kind of think that there's like a little kind of like, okay, like I bet like you get him, I'll go here, and it's gonna be like, I mean, 'cause I think that's gonna be like the competition in the East. So it's like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that Drew Holiday kind of he might take that little extra chip on the shoulder there and just say, hey, like I'm gonna go out here and like I want to beat you guys specifically. Like I want to absolutely dominate.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny you say that because that was one of the things that I was kind of thinking about just before he did get traded from the Trailblazers. It was like, because I saw like the 76ers and the Bucks, and you saw the Heat, and you're like, really? Like, is he going to be traded to an East Conference rival like that? And I mean, he did. He got traded to the Boston Celtics. I feel like, yeah, he does have a little bit of chip on his shoulder. I feel like he's going to help elevate that Boston Celtics team mentally. Like they're gonna like we've seen them in the past, the Celtics in the last couple of years. They go to the Eastern Conference Finals, they lose, win, lose. So I feel like he can give them that extra, get them over the hump. Does it mean that they're going to win the finals, win it all? I mean, we saw them go 2 years ago against the Warriors. If you would have switched Marcus Smart with Jrue Holiday, I still don't think that Celtics would have won that finals. I don't know. I just feel like Steph Curry was on a mission. That Warriors team was on a mission, just that whole postseason. But I mean, Drew Holiday, he's not a bad player. 19.3 points last year, 7.4 assists, 5 rebounds, and about a steal. Shooting 38.4% from three. So I mean, he can shoot. He's not a light out shooter, but like he can shoot. It's about the same that you got from Marcus Smart. You're gonna most likely gonna get like the same game you did from Marcus Smart from Drew Holiday. Like their games are kind of similar. Drew, you could say he's a little bit better of an efficient shooter, but they're gonna get the same player. And Drew, I think he's a little bit taller as well. So I definitely think that them going up against just the Bucks specifically because of the chip on the shoulder, yeah, big time, big time. I think he does, but it'll be interesting to see. This is just me, but I feel like the trades aren't done yet. I feel like there's going to
Oh,
be
definitely not. Yeah, definitely not.
somebody in the East is going to make some big splash, whether it's middle of the season, trade deadline. Somebody's gonna do something to switch things, and I think it's interesting because I feel like these two teams right here, the Bucks and the Celtics, I think they're 1 and 2. They're going to be, unless there's a big injury to one of these players on the team, I feel like this is 1 and 2 all year, and then you have the Cavs and the Sixers going for 3 and 4. But I don't see anybody really competing with the Bucks or the Celtics this year, as
Yeah,
far as
no,
the
absolutely
Eastern
not.
Conference.
Yeah, no, I agree, but also Drew Holiday is definitely better than Marcus Smart. Just he's
Oh,
definitely gonna he's definitely taking him to that next. I think he's gonna take him to that next spot. Just I like what you said too. Is like that mentality wise too. Like Marcus Smart also brought like a different type, kind of like more just like a dog mentality, kind of just like that tough, like grind it out. Like not that Drew Holiday doesn't. It's just like a Marcus Smart's a little more petty with it. I'll say just like
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
stuff like
No, I get that. I get that. I get
like
that.
kind of
Yeah.
like a more like that Pat Bev energy, that like kind of like that. Like you just and you to a point you kind of need that like on your team, like someone that's just gonna go out there, kind of get in the opponent's head and all that. But just Drew Holiday is a phenomenal playmaker. He can, I mean, like you said, he's not like a knockdown shooter, but that team is just full of shooters. So I mean,
Hmm.
he's able to just dish. He's able to space it out, dish it out to anybody. I mean, Drew Holiday's, like you said, decent shooter. Jaylen Brown can shoot. Tatum's obviously a phenomenal shooter. Goat Zingis, that's all he does is just shoot the three. And then Big Al. I mean, Big Al's back there just launching those things. So I mean, you're basically gonna have, I mean, just a team full of shooters, which will be that's always kind of like what you want, I guess, like in the modern game, I'll call it. So definitely, I think it's gonna be interesting, but I also think the Bucks are gonna be interesting too, just kind of seeing how, just especially how they run that pick and roll with Giannis and Dame. Because I think if you're
Hmm.
running that against Porzingis, I don't know, I can see some liability issues there. So that's why I'd still lean toward the Bucks there. I definitely think this brought the Celtics like on that same pedestal almost. So like I mean, I think this will be a phenomenal series, truly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. Real quick, I just want to I want to ask you who, on paper right now, who has the better starting five? I'm gonna give starting five and then the benchman, the
I
six man.
bet.
So I'll start with the Bucks. So we have Damian Lillard, Pat Connaughton, Chris Middleton, Giannis, Brooke Lopez, and Bobby Portis as a six man.
Arkansas
For the
Razorback.
Celtics, you'll have Drew Holiday, Derek White, Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum, Kristaps Porzingis, and Al Horford as a six man. Just hearing those two, starting five, and one guy off the bench, who do you think has the edge?
I mean, I would give it to the Bucks just because I think there's just a little more star power there,
Mm.
and I mean, both teams have gotten to that championship. The Bucks have actually gotten it done, which is kind of why I just Giannis knows how to get that to that next step, and I think Tatum definitely can get there. But just with the addition of like adding Dame to the already like extremely like hungry roster, like
Oh yeah.
I think you have to give it to those, and I think it's really because of those that dynamic duo really with those stars, because then that just allows Chris to shine a little bit better. And I just like I don't. Drew Holiday is fantastic. I think it's really going to be still Tatum, who's obviously we know he's fantastic, an MVP caliber type of player. He does have it in him like that. But Jaylen Brown, I don't think he's like that guy. I mean, he's got one arm
He's iffy
basically.
at
It looks
times,
like
especially in the
yeah,
playoffs. He's iffy.
he's only got his right arm, which is it's just kind of hard to play
I was
basketball
just
like
about to
that.
say that. Yup.
So like it's kind of
Yup.
kind of tough when you only got one arm. So it's like
Yup.
you got him, and then just Drew Holiday's not like that, light it up type of scorer. Like I mean, you still have Tatum to do that and distribute it. And like I said again, it's tough because I can see like I think their offense is going to be phenomenal. I think they're going to be so good still. I really it just comes down to really that pairing of Dame and Giannis, being able to run that pick and roll, that pick and fade, and then still have Chris Middleton as kind of that third option. Like I think just saying Chris Middleton as a third option, I mean
Yep.
that shows a lot right there because he was a second option on a championship team. So
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned options. It'll be interesting to see where Drew Holiday ends up. Is he going to be the third or the fourth option for the Celtics? Because it's really between him and Porzingis for that third, fourth option. I feel like it's gonna depend night to night. Just based on games, I feel like that depending on the matchup, that's who it's gonna be. But obviously, like you said, Tatum and Brown are gonna be the top two guys.
yeah, I mean Porzingis just if he gets back to like that like if he got to get back to like those like early like first year drafted Knicks days when he was like a defensive menace
Oh yeah.
and he could actually like I mean basically like every putback I feel like he was just there. Like I mean it was insane. And I think if you get that, which again, this is all hypotheticals. I don't see this happening. I would love to see it happen because I was dumb enough to get his jersey, but like I actually like Porzingis. I thought it was cool. I thought he was like just an insanely good player because he could do it both ways. And now I don't. He really just to me. I just see him sticking around the perimeter, just shooting up threes. It doesn't seem like he's really that aggressive mentality, put back dunks that he used to be. And so, if we were to get that, and if I were to see that this year, I don't know. I could potentially see me changing my mind about that Bucks and Celtics because I think if you add essentially that type of star caliber player as the third option, second option, potentially even if Brown really starts kind of selling,
Mm-hmm.
then I think that could be interesting. But again, I don't really see that happening.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, if we get if we get All Star Chris Stapps back, yeah, I think. I mean, the Celtics pose a real threat. Last year, he didn't even play that bad, really. Obviously, he was with the Wizards, so it wasn't like that too big of a deal. He was kind of under the radar, but last season he showed signs that he's. I'm not going to say all star, right there, but he's getting progression. He's playing a little bit more assertive. At least that's what I saw from the games and things that I saw from him last season with the Wizards. So I don't know.
So that's why, I
Speaking
mean, I
of,
hope so. I hope so. As long as if he's not going to be like that, if it's like that third option kind of just sits in the corner. I could see it being like, okay, not good. But if he gets that aggressive mentality, they give it to him down low. I mean, the dude's 7'3" for a reason. Like, come on
hmm
now. But
yeah,
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 carry on though.
yeah. He mentioned this week at media day, how he was excited to kind of be refreshed, be on a championship caliber team.